And thanks very much, Ken Warkentin. Welcome, everybody, to the SNY Sam McKee Memorial Broadcast Center here on the first floor at Meadowlands Racing and Entertainment. I'm Dave Little. It's time for In the Sulky, and I'm joined by Yannick Gingras. Yannick, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
No, anytime, absolutely.
Now, listen, we'll get to the harness racing in a minute, all right? But something very important we have to discuss. Now, my New York Rangers, they had a lousy year. Your Montreal Canadiens, a lousy year. How did the Vegas Golden Knights play for Lord Stanley's Cup in the final?
You know, I think everything aligned in the right place for them. You know, they had the way the draft was, and what the expansion draft was. You know, it worked out good for them. But there's no doubt, you know, Jerry Gallant did a great job as a coach, and you know, as far as my abs, they're terrible, and I'm sorry to admit that. But hopefully they turn the corner in a couple of years. Maybe we'll be contenders again.
Hopefully the Rangers and the Habs will play in the Eastern Conference Finals one of these years soon. But I tell you what, Yannick, let's get right to it. I have a first graphic up here, and it's called "It's Grand to be Gingras." And first and foremost, you're the first call for both the Tactor and the Burke Barnes. How did that come about, and how long has that been going on? Because that really puts you in the driver's seat.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. You know, I started driving for Ronnie maybe 2007, 2008, and I was like third or fourth driver for him. You know, Brian had a lot of the power for him then, and other drivers. And, you know, it's I'm a loyal guy to those guys, you know, and I started driving for Ronnie. I picked the horses most of the time. I wouldn't pick off too often, and obviously maybe I did some good for him, and he gave me better horses as we went along. And no, Ronnie was definitely there first, no doubt about it, as far as that duo. And then Jimmy, you know, I drove for him maybe 6-7 years ago a little bit. Pastor Stevens, probably one of the first good one I drove for him. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, we started hooking up more and more, and it's a great relationship with both of them. It's you know, they're different guys, but both are very powerful, and obviously very fortunate to be first call on for both.
Is there ever a scenario, Yannick, where, let's say, Tactor has the better horse, but you drive Burke for some reason, or vice versa?
Well, you know, certain horses, you know what I mean, here and there, like obviously if Foilighen's in a race, you know, I'll drive him, you know, even if Jimmy has one that's better, things like that. But I try to be up front with both of them. I try to pick the best horse. You know, they're my two guys. You know, as far as other trainers, their horse have to be quite a bit better than Ronnie and Jimmy for me to take them. You know, if they're a better horse, then both of these guys understand. But as far as Jimmy and Ronnie are concerned, I try to go with the best horse.
All right, you've won 4 straight Hambletonian Oaks. Obviously, a great accomplishment. You're going for 5 this year, but you might not have the best filly because the best filly might go in the Hambletonian. What do you think about Manchego and her possibility of racing in the Hambletonian?
Well, this is not my call. That would be Jimmy and the owner's call. You know, she's been tremendous. You know, obviously she's never been beat. You know, I'm really happy with where she's coming. I think she's had a couple easy start. Last week she got strung out a little bit, and I think she needed the start. I think it should be that much stronger. But you know, whatever they go, you know, if they decide to go to Hambletonian, if they go to the Oaks, it'd be fine with me. That's their call.
Now, last year you were selected as the United States Harness Riders Association Driver of the Year. The second time that you won the award, you also won it in 2014. But last year you only won 395 races, and I say only because for the 8 years prior, you'd won well over 400. Now, is that a conscious decision by you to do a little less driving and not do a lot of the double headers that a lot of the other guys are doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, if you see my amount of start, they decline every year. You know, the money is still close to be the same, but my kids are getting a little bit older. My son's 13. You know, 2 girls, they're 10 and 6. Try to spend some time at home. It took some weekends off last year. This winter I was 10 days away. I went to a hockey tournament with my son in Quebec. You know, those are the type of things that 4 or 5 years ago I wouldn't have done. You know, you know, you always worry about the horses being there still, and you know, in your mind as a catch driver, you think that they'll forget about you quite easily. But when you realize that people respect that, they respect that I want to spend some time at home and you know, do those things with my kids, and so there's no doubt the amounts of wins are going to keep declining. I would assume over the years, and I'm not worried about that. You know, like I said, maybe if the kids once they're grown up, but hopefully when they're grown up, I'll be slowing down even more. You know, so but right now. My priority, number one, is to spend some time with them, and obviously the big races.
Now, January of last year, I got in touch with you, and we had a very long conversation about the state of the game. And sometimes for me, it gets a little bit cumbersome, but you know, you might bring us a little bit of a fresh perspective. You would talk to me about marketing really being the only way that we can bring a lot of people out to the track who are basically younger than me, because every night when I leave this track at midnight, all I see are folks who are in my age group. So your key was to take a percentage of all purses. Tell us about that.
Well, you know, I don't know what the answer is, honestly. That was just an idea. This is an idea that it's been brought up by other people. I still think it's the best thing that we could do right now. But it doesn't seem that the Horseman group want to go for it. I don't know. Like my personal opinion, I think we should take a percentage, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 5%. I don't know what it is, but and hire a marketing firm. No offense to the Meadowlands, and no offense to Yonkers Raceway or PA or anybody. I don't think that they're competent to do it. It's not their job.
People,
what I mean? They're not publicity people. I'm not. The Horseman Association are not either. The way I would like to see it done is, let's say, take, like I said, X amount % out of the purses, hire a firm that could do it, like for all of United States. I understand PA's money is legislated, right? So if you take money out of the purse account in Pennsylvania, it has to be spent for publicity in Pennsylvania. You can't take money from there and promote the Hambletonian, let's say. And same thing for New York, and same thing for Ohio, I'm sure. But you could still hire a firm that's, that's for the United States, and then spend the money wisely. Maybe you put the Little Brown Jug on television. Maybe you put the Yonkers Strut on television, or whatever they decide. It's not my job. But I do feel that the harness racing is going down, and like you said, the people at the track are much, much older than me, and it's unfortunate. And the way I see it is that, a lot of the Horseman Association group, they want to say, well, as long as when the track put the money up, we'll match it. Well, a lot of the racetrack, unfortunately, couldn't care less if we close or if we stay open. You know what I mean? They would actually give money for us to close. So are we going to keep pointing fingers at them and say, well, you know what? That's their fault. The way I see it, no, it's our own fault. We have to we have to promote ourselves. We have to take it upon ourselves. And if they want to match, even better. Then we have double the money. But if they don't, I don't want to come 20 years from now and say, well, you know what? That's their fault. They didn't want to match our money, and then we have nothing. You know what I mean? I think the time is now. We're still racing for a lot of money in the United States. The slots is still going strong. So before it's too late, I hope that people wake up and decide to spend the money wisely.
Okay, well, definitely some good opinions and hopefully some stuff that we want to think about doing. Let's get into something that I want to call Yannick's Live Drives. Now, a couple of weeks ago up at Woodbine Mohawk Park, you were the winner with Wolfgang in the Good Times, and he looked awfully good doing it.
Yeah, he's a really, really nice horse. I sat behind him last year in the Matron the first time, and I really liked him. He raced really good, and then he came here for the Valley Victory. I was really pleased the way he raced as well. I think if I got out a little sooner in the final, he would have gave 4 Dimension all he wanted, and he, so far this year he's 2 for 2, and Jimmy decided not to race him at Pocono. He didn't want to race him 4 weeks in a row, but I think he'll be a big time factor in the Ambo.
Do you think he's a deserving Hamiltonian front runner?
Well, I don't know if he's a front runner, but he's definitely, let's say, part of the top 3 or top 5. I think at this point, I'm not sure anybody really stamped himself as the big time favorite. I think obviously, Six Pack. If one of the fillies want to go in, whether it be Atlanta or Manchego, him. There's a lot of horses. Melender's duo, they're really nice as well. So, there's 5, 6, 7 horses that have shots, and that's what makes the Ambo interesting this year.
All right, we touched on Manchego earlier. If Wolfgang and Manchego had a match race, and Yannick Gingras drove both, who would win?
That'd be a dead heat.
Be a dead heat? Oh, come on, give me a break, will you? Give me a break.
Yeah.
All right, I tell you what, let's move on to a horse who we're going to have the pleasure to see tonight, who you're going to have the pleasure to drive for the Burke Brigade, and that, of course, is the defending Horse of the Year, Hannelore Hanover. And we want to take a look at a race that she was contested earlier this year. It was the Cutler, and you won from post 12. How did this go?
Well, honestly, it did not go the way I thought. The gates swung onto the 1 and 2 and 3 horse, swung, kind of bounced in their face. So I missed my start there. I started maybe 3 or 4 or 5 lengths, maybe even behind the rest of the field when the gate opened. So not only you start with post 12, but then you gave up 3 or 4 lengths at the start. I couldn't believe she won from there. First start of the year, a lot of the horses in there had been racing, for a month or a month and a half, and I was super impressed. And she's come back as good as a horse could come back, and she's sound and happy, and sky's the limit.
In her first start of last year, she got caught from behind. So I figured, gee, maybe that's a trend with her, that maybe she won't be as sharp in her first race. But she was super in that race. Is she better at 6 than she was at 5?
No doubt. She's sounder than she was last year. Early last year, she was she wasn't 100%. It took a little while for Ronnie to get her 100%. And in the fall, by the time we hit Lexington and British ground, she was on top of her game then. So thankfully this year he got her rolling earlier.
Okay, great. Well, that's Yannick Gingras, and this has been in the Sulky tonight. In the featured preferred handicap for trotters, Yannick will drive Hannelore Hanover, the 4 to 5 morning line favorite. Yannick, good luck down the road in the Hambletonian, the Hambletonian Oaks, and everything else for 2018.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being with us.
Yep.
We'll be right back. Dave Brower's going to jump in that chair as Yannick goes to work. We're going to take a look at this week's Driver and Trainer of the Week and tonight's featured races.